I did not find out that I was an ADHDer until my mid-20s, despite the fact that I used to post videos like this to YouTube.
In geography, it was so boring. I literally was bleeding with boredness. It was horrible, but I think I've lost some important papers. Yeah, anyway, I'm gonna go now. Bye.
It was tricky for me to see ADHD traits in myself, harder than it was with autistic traits for some reason. And apparently only 1 in 9 ADHDers in the UK are actually diagnosed. So it seems like a lot of people are not seeing it too. And if you don't know either, let's go through 10 signs that you might not be an ADHDer, because sometimes it can be an interesting thought experiment to flip it around. Remember, I'm not a medical professional, I am just a neurodivergent person with butterfly earrings and no degree. I cannot diagnose you, and you absolutely shouldn't doubt your diagnosis based on anything that I say, based on anything that comes out of my mouth or any other YouTuber's mouth, but I will leave the diagnostic criteria for ADHD linked below for some further reading. Remember, you do not need to hit every single trait in order to be diagnosed, and there are actually 3 different types of ADHD. There's inattentive, hyperactive, combined type, which I'm diagnosed with. We're all 3 different, and it's complicated. This video is not intended to invalidate anyone. In fact, I'm hoping it might do the opposite. There is no right way to ADHD. Number 1, you might not be an ADHDer if you find it super easy to relax and rest. If it's possible for your body to be still and your mind to also be still. And if you know what to do, if you feel like you know where to put yourself, if you have free time, empty time stretching out before you, if that doesn't give you anxiety. This was an issue for me in my late teens when I was studying for my exams. I was very, very stressed out, and people would say to me, Meg, just take a break. Just watch some trash TV and turn your brain off. But that's the thing, even if I'm physically resting, doesn't mean my brain has shut up. I did try, I put on some comfort movies, I went swimming, but my brain continued spinning at the same pace. I had thoughts bouncing off the walls in there, and therefore it wasn't restful. So if you are an ADHDer, maybe you found that more active resting works better for you. Doing something, but a different something from the thing that you need a break from, if that makes sense. If you leave your brain unattended with nothing to sink its teeth into, now I'm imagining a brain with teeth, it might find something else to do, and you might not like the thing that it finds to do, such as, of course, falling into a doom scroll paralysis, which we all do. It is allowed, but it mostly doesn't feel that restful or fun to me. My neurotypical husband might be another sort of extreme, but he tells me he doesn't really have thoughts, and the thoughts that he does have are mostly about football. Now, I've never been there myself, obviously, but I get the sense that his mind is quite a peaceful, easy place. And I guess that's one of the reasons why I have the diagnosis and he doesn't. I think it's always important to remember that the H in ADHD can refer to mental hyperactivity as well as physical. So if you're able to go on holiday and lie on the beach without feeling restless, then you might not be an ADHDer. Number 2, you might not be an ADHDer if you didn't have a habit of zoning out when you were at school, or just generally when people are talking to you. If you haven't been told off for not listening very often. But before we discuss that in detail, I want to quickly tell you about a super helpful tool that was created with neurodivergent people in mind that you can try right now for free using the link below. Because Xtiles are kindly sponsoring another video. I think planning your life using various productivity tools can easily become more stressful than just living it. I've tried so many that are just clunky, cluttered, heavy, and not very visually appealing. But I've been using Xtiles for about a year now, and I absolutely love it. Xtiles is your visual planner. It's based on bullet journals and paper planners, fully digital. Let me show you how I use Xtiles and how you might like to too. So you can create a personal space here related to any area of your life. I've split my life into key areas: family, fun, finances, health, and work currently. And a major difference between Xtiles and other tools is this ability to just create a project from scratch. So I can click new project here, start from scratch, and there's no right way to use Xtiles. You can treat Xtiles like a blank page and just start adding tiles. So you just drag to add a tile, you can move them wherever you want, and you can change them now to any custom color that you want. Let's make it pink. So I've recently moved again, and for the first time in my adult life, I have some room to have a dining room table. So say I wanted to make this blank page into a home decoration, home renovation plan. So I can easily add this image of a dining room table that I've been eyeing up. So you could have kind of like your budget, in there too for your renovation plan. And you can make, little notes to yourself. You can also add widgets, like I could add a little calendar here. Let me show you another one that I've made. Here's one I made earlier. I've been planning a new filming setup. So I've got some inspo pictures, and as well as my inspiration photos, I've also got measurements, I've got some tasks. So just click here if I want to add another task. So let's say research new camera lens, and then I can choose when I would like to do that. Any tasks that you've created anywhere in X-Tiles will automatically show up in one panel. So I just click tasks here and I can see all of my upcoming tasks. X-Tiles syncs with your Google Calendar too, so that you don't forget anything. So if you want to try organizing your life without overwhelm, you can click the link in the description, try it out for free. Also have paid options with extra features such as 100+ premium templates, a 2-way Google Calendar sync, recurring tasks, and tons of useful widgets like a Pomodoro timer. I'd absolutely recommend giving it a go. You have nothing to lose. Back to the video. Have you ever experienced the pure horror of a teacher saying something like, "Let's get started, you have 30 minutes," or "You may begin," and you realize with a sinking feeling that you have no idea what you're supposed to be starting or beginning? You thought you had been present in the room while they were explaining what you had to do. Your body had been there. You were looking in the right direction. Maybe you were. Maybe you're looking out the window. I don't know. But it turns out you were not actually in the room. Your mind had been sucked somewhere far, far away without your consent. And now everyone around you is turning pages and picking up pencils with confidence, and you have no idea what for. Or at the very least, there are gaps. There are gaps in your knowledge. And so if you're like me, you spend 30 minutes sitting there feeling embarrassed, hoping nobody notices that you've spent the last 30 minutes writing and underlining the date. As a child, I also got into trouble with certain family members for ignoring them. They'd ask me something like, "Oh, can you just pass me that cup behind you?" And I'd completely blank them, and I'd stare blankly back at them and do nothing. It was interpreted as rudeness, but sometimes I was so in my own world that I literally hadn't heard them. And if I did, it took a while for me to process that request. And in that time, they'd already written me off. If you can't relate, maybe you're not an ADHDer, or maybe you just don't have the inattentive type. Remember, there are 3 different types of ADHD. Number 3, you might not be an ADHDer if you see yourself as quite emotionally level and chilled out. If you're not somebody who's quite quick to extremes of emotion. And remember, these emotions might not necessarily be externalized all the time, but you still feel them. Some people argue that difficulties with emotional regulation should actually be considered a core trait of ADHD. ADHDers might experience something called emotional flooding, which is basically exactly what it sounds like. Being completely overwhelmed by an intense surge wave of emotion. It could be anger, sadness, shame, self-loathing, or even good ones like excitement. It's all consuming, and this applies more to the negative emotions, but it feels very much in the moment like you will never be able to claw your way out of that feeling. You will now be in that emotional state forever. Of course, that isn't true, but unfortunately it feels very true every single time. Your attention is just completely fixed on that emotion. It's like you have blinkers on. This is where mindfulness and basically all of the tips I shared in this other video I made recently can be really helpful. I'll leave it linked on screen and in the description. ADHDers can also be very emotionally sensitive to rejection or perceived rejection or criticism or perceived criticism. You might have heard of rejection sensitive dysphoria, which is spoken about quite a lot in the neurodivergent community. It can lead to you being very easily embarrassed, and it can also lead to people-pleasing tendencies because you're so desperate to avoid the anguish that comes from somebody disliking you or disagreeing with you even. I've also recently been reading a lot about low frustration tolerance. When I first read that phrase, I was like, uh-oh, it me. It's sometimes called discomfort anxiety, which I prefer. If you've ever experienced something like, I don't know, needing another stupid OTP to log into something that in your mind should probably be quite low security, and then your phone's in the other room or it's somewhere, and it's so annoying to you that you're suddenly overtaken by thoughts such as, "Nothing ever goes right for me," or "The universe is conspiring against me and conspiring for my failure." If that sounds familiar, then you might also have this. Someone else said on Reddit, "If something goes wrong, like I drop my drink on the floor, I can't get an appointment the week that fits my schedule, I realize I don't have an ingredient for the meal I want to make, etc., it makes me want to fall on the floor and scream until I pass away, honestly. It's like distress, sometimes quite an extreme distress at any sort of friction or unexpected obstacle in your day. Again, you might not necessarily externalize this, but you feel it. It's there. I just so often find myself wishing that life was a bit smoother, and I feel like I imagine at some point I'll iron out all the creases, you know, and everything will just work. Everything will just fall into place. But of course, there's always going to be discomfort. And very often, good things, all the things that matter to you, are on the other side of some level of discomfort. I just do wish I didn't feel quite as uncomfortable so much of the time, personally. Again, check out the self-care tips video. If you don't relate, maybe you're not an ADHD, or maybe you've just got coping mechanisms in place. This is especially likely, you know, if you've gone undiagnosed for a long time. Number 4, you might not be an ADHD if you mostly remember where you've put important things. So I lose my rings quite a lot. I take them off if I'm not filming or if I'm not leaving the house, basically. It's a sensory thing. Having sensory stuff can also be another side of being an ADHDer. I can always feel them on my fingers, and I don't like typing with them on. And the issue is, if I take them off, I will just put them anywhere, and my memory of the incident will be completely wiped. Very handy. I've had to start acquiring little trays and bowls so they have an actual home. I need one for each room of my house, basically. But at the moment, hopefully, if I lose my rings, they will either be on the leaf or in the orange. Very cute charity shop orange. Hey, it was £2.50. Still got the tag on. Which is good, because speaking of low frustration tolerance, does it feel like the world is ending to anyone else whenever you lose something? Because it does for me. To be honest, there are a lot of neurotypicals who are quite forgetful and lose stuff too, but if you lose things quite a lot and you also relate to a lot of other traits of ADHD, then you could be an ADHDer. Number 5, you might not be an ADHDer if you don't tend to make careless mistakes. For example, when you're filling out forms. I am the queen of typos, no matter how long I have spent on a piece of work, no matter how many times I have proofread that piece of work. Because when I proofread, my brain sort of just skips ahead and autocorrects it for me. I read it correctly, regardless of whether or not it is actually correct. I see only what I want to see. I remember I had a college English teacher who got so frustrated with me because I kept typing the word dairy when I was supposed to write diary. Or was it the other way around? I actually think it was the other way around. I think I was supposed to be writing dairy and I wrote diary. I don't know. I don't even know what the right thing is now. And I just kept on doing it in every draft of this piece of work. And if you're simultaneously a perfectionist, this is really annoying. But we're back to the low frustration tolerance again. Luckily, I have my neurotypical husband who is like a proofreading wizard, but he did not manage to catch the typo in my last video. So there we go. So anyway, if your brain rushes ahead and you end up making errors which are hard for you to spot, then you might be an ADHDer. Number 6, you might not be an ADHDer if you don't make impulsive decisions that could have serious consequences. This is not a trait I personally relate to that much. As I say, you don't need to collect them all. Personally, I tend to really overthink decisions, if anything. I suppose I am impulsive in smaller ways, like I really don't like waiting. I can overshare and interrupt people sometimes. And I cannot for the life of me get myself to stick to a routine or schedule. But for some ADHDers, this impulsivity manifests as reckless driving, dangerous physical activities which could increase their risk of injury, overspending, gambling or making risky investments, risky sexual behavior, potential issues with substance abuse, and even incarceration. And this is one of the reasons why getting a diagnosis, or at least understanding yourself and your behaviors, can be so important, no matter how old you are. You know, never write yourself off. Never say that it's too late for you. It really might help you to make sense of things in your past and to forgive yourself for them as well. That was one of the things that was said to me when I got my diagnosis, and I just sat there and cried. However, I also do want to just say quickly that we must be careful as neurodivergent people not to write off decisions that we've made as impulsive simply because we maybe had a bit of an unconventional path. We maybe did things a bit differently or in the wrong order, in quotation marks. I had my son when I was quite young, and looking back over my life through this new lens of autism and ADHD, I could easily frame that as an impulsive decision just because it was a bit unconventional. But that just wouldn't be true. It was very meticulously planned and a very overthought decision that I made. I think other people can sometimes be quite quick to judge decisions as impulsive simply because they don't agree with them. Getting tattoos and piercings are another good example. Doing things differently, of course, doesn't automatically mean bad or morally wrong. So if you are on the path of discovering that you're a neurodivergent person, be careful not to frame your life too negatively when you look back, and make sure to give yourself credit where you deserve it. Often we can be kind of free spirits and just do things our own way, and that can be a really good thing sometimes. Yes, it can have negative consequences sometimes, but it doesn't always. Number 7, you might not be an ADHDer if you don't experience extremes of focus. ADHD is a pretty crap name. Basically, many people argue that it's silly to call it an attention deficit because ADHD is more like a struggle to regulate your attention. Yes, sometimes we do struggle to focus, especially on something that we find boring. That can be painful. But some ADHDers also experience hyperfocus, which is like a very intense flow state. The rest of the world just falls away and you become completely engulfed by the task that you're doing. This has pros and cons. It basically feels like your body doesn't exist anymore. You can forget to eat, forget to sleep. And when someone tries to communicate with you while you're in that state, tries to break that focus, you can get pretty snappy sometimes. And what you hyperfocus on so often isn't in your control. Zoning out and daydreaming while the teacher's talking can be a kind of hyperfocus. So if you feel like you're able to regulate your attention pretty well, focus when you need to, and pull yourself away when you need to, you might not be an ADHDer. But it's important to remember not all ADHDers experience hyperfocus. Number 8, you might not be an ADHDer if you don't struggle with your working memory. Working memory is your ability to hold information in your head for long enough for you to be able to do stuff with that information. Say somebody gives you directions to follow. Are you able to hold those directions in your head for long enough for them to be useful for you, or do they just poof out of your head? Can you remember someone's name a few moments after they've introduced themselves? When you walk into a room to get something, can you usually remember your quest, or do you come back empty-handed? Are you any good at mental maths? If you find the information you need in the short term tends to evaporate, if you often forget your point mid-sentence, then you might have some struggles with your working memory. And if you have other traits of ADHD, that might be because you're an ADHDer. And closely related, you might not be an ADHDer if you don't relate to feeling kinda smart but kinda dumb at the same time. I'm actually trying to remove words like stupid and dumb from my vocabulary. I don't think people's value as human beings should be determined by how intelligent we think they are. It's so complicated and difficult to measure anyway. So many people have spiky profiles and extreme strengths and weaknesses. And also there are a lot of intelligent people who are and were awful. Maybe we're placing value on the wrong traits in society, and maybe that will be our downfall. Who can say? But I will say that word here because I do think it's an accurate description of how I felt about myself growing up. I felt kind of smart but kind of dumb too. I felt like I had to work extra hard to prove that I could be smart enough. I would compare myself to other girls in my year who got similar grades to me, and maybe I was actually wrong in some cases, but I got the sense that the way that they got to the same results as me was less chaotic. They were on a smoother path. And I imagine I likely did put in more work, maybe significantly more work than they did. I didn't feel like I was a natural. And I think some of that feeling was down to them being more organized or seeming more organized than me, their work being more neatly presented than mine. And also I think a large part of it was the whole working memory, thoughts and ideas poofing out of my head quite frequently thing as well. I really didn't understand why that happened to me. So I was never good on the spot answering questions in class, and don't ask me how to spell words out loud. And similarly, number 10, if you don't have ADHD, you might have never struggled with this feeling that you're too much and you need to minimize your personality in order to be accepted. So some ADHDers receive a lot of negative feedback as children about their behavior. They're told they're too loud, maybe they talk too much, they move around too much, they have too much energy, maybe they're told they're a show-off. That was one that I got when I was about 10 years old, and it made me feel so horrified and ashamed of myself. You know, I like to move my body a lot and perform little dances that I'd choreographed for family members. Now most of the time when I meet people, I don't like to share very much about myself, even though sometimes I also do overshare, which is an interesting combination. But I also tend to be quite quiet and meek and passive. I don't move my body very much at all. I shrink, I mask. I have a lot of videos on my channel about masking specifically through the lens of autism, but a lot of ADHDers also mask, so some of that may resonate with you as well. And you could also even be autistic. A lot of us are both. As well as feeling like too much, some ADHDers also might feel like they're not enough. You could feel both simultaneously. As I mentioned in the last point, you may have always felt like you have to try so much harder than everyone else to get to the same result. Like you have to put in more effort to match other people's average, and like you have to prove yourself. If you don't feel the need to edit and monitor your behavior in social settings, then you might not be an ADHDer. Or you know what, you might just be an ADHDer who's super comfortable in their own skin, which is lovely. Continue as you are. I really like the quote. I think I first heard it from Taylor from Mom on the Spectrum. It's something like, if I'm too much, then go find less. And at the moment, I have to keep actively reminding myself that people being completely themselves tends to be really attractive. People actually tend to gravitate towards that, or at least the right sort of people. And a bonus sign that you might actually be an ADHDer if you skipped through this video to each tip and didn't listen to most of what I said and ruined my YouTube watch time and made my retention graph look like this. It's okay, I forgive you, it's fine. As long as you got something from this, it's all good. Now, if you want 10 more signs that you couldn't possibly by any means be an ADHDer, then you might also enjoy this video. I will leave it linked on screen and in the description. It's basically part 1 of this video. And I was wearing the same shirt and the same earrings. You see, continuity. Well, not continuity, it's a completely different background, but you know. Anyway, consistency, I don't know. What word do I want to say? Some word beginning with a C. If you finished watching everything on this channel and you want 2 extra videos every month, plus a backlog of 30 plus exclusive videos, including one where I reacted to vlogs I made as a teenager in which I seem very hyperactive and I don't know how nobody saw that I was an ADHDer, then you are very welcome to support the channel on Patreon. The lowest tier is $4. I will leave it linked on screen and in the description. If you do click the link below, you can see what is available on all the different tiers and you can watch and listen to previews for all of the content. I also have a podcast that I do with my neurotypical husband where we discuss things from an autistic and neurotypical perspective. And all patrons have access to the Discord server to chat to like-minded neurodivergent snails. You don't have to be diagnosed with anything to join. You are very welcome to join if you are neurotypical as well, as long as you're kind. It doesn't matter. It's a lovely, safe, welcoming space. And we're going to play Fall Guys again soon. I will put the date on screen because I cannot remember it, but it is a Sunday that is occurring at some point this year. I think it's October. Don't know why it was a song. Thank you very, very much to everybody who does support me over there because it makes this possible. Thank you so much again to Xtiles for continuing to partner with this channel. I really appreciate your support for the neurodivergent community. Remember, you can get started with Xtiles completely for free using the link below. And I'll see you in my next video very soon. Bye!